Hello and welcome to the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and it is my pleasure to present to you an exclusive. This is Ship Jumpers, the new single from Pilot to Gunner.
Here's to the ones who are dying to make the clock slow up. All's well that just ends. We're finalizing our fall. All versus nothing and nothing beats all. Here's to the ship jumpers. Where would we be? Spitting up teeth. We're making our list. It's all blackout dispatches. Don't go a-changing. Try to resist. Here's to the ones who are starting a half a step ahead, up and without end, up till 5 into something, and there's no way to maintain that. Here's to the ship jumpers. Oh, look at us. No, look at us. Lucked into last place, up till 5 into something, and there's no way to get that back. Why wait? 'Cause when it's over, gotta give the itch the slip. Why try to win us over? Shake us, wake us. Time to jump ship. So switch off the TV and twist off the IV. You'll see me terrified, damned if I remember why. Why wait? 'Cause when it's over, gotta give the itch the slip. Why try to win us over? Shake us, wake us. Time to jump ship. And it's time to jump ship. Our calling never called, and we maybe got skipped. Maybe once and for all, we're the things that fall. Our calling never called at all, at all, at all.
That was Ship Jumpers by the one and only Pilot to Gunner. And on this episode of the podcast, we bring to you the one and only Scott Padden of the aforementioned band. Now, I've been listening to Pilot to Gunner and Scott since the mid-90s, somewhere in the vicinity thereof. And I had never imagined in my wildest thoughts, meanderings, dreams, what have you, that Scott and I would devolve with one another into a, semi-daily ball-busting session. But that's kind of what had become of us thereafter this interview. We hit it off right away, and I have to tell you, it hasn't really ended. Scott and I have a shorthand that is usually reserved for people that have known each other for a vast amount of time. We have not, but what we have is, a language that I think is shared by people of our age group from our scene and it's self-evident once you hear the contents of this episode. So, without further ado, I present to you Scott Padden of Pilot to Gunner on the book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. And give me permission to record your likeness and your voice for the purposes of this podcast.
Yes, my name is Scott Padden, and you have my permission to use my voice and my likeness for the podcast.
Thank you, Scott. So, I mean, I normally have a format that I follow, and it's only one question. That is the format. And we're not going to do that quite yet because, I have been listening to Pilot to Gunner since 1998 or 9. Okay.
God damn.
And well, I'm 46 years old. I mean, I'm a little long in the tooth, brother, but
you're right in the demo. You're right in the demo.
But you have to tell me, what is it like being legitimately in the third decade of recording music for a band? How does that, what's that look like for you?
I mean, you look back and you realize that you could have made things so much easier for yourself when you were younger. You realize like the things that you thought were important. It's like if you go back 10 years, it's like, oh, I really wish I had thought about that differently. Go back 20 and you're like, oh shit, that was embarrassing. Go back further and you don't even want to think about what your mindset was about recording like that long ago and that young and that just stupid, and not that I've got it all figured out or anything, but it's just like the further back you go, you always second guess yourself, and the second guessing gets more harsh the further back you go.
Sure,
you know
because
what I mean?
you're your own worst critic, obviously, always.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
like you guys, it's not like anyone had ever had a bad thing to say about Pilot to Gunner. It's not like I'm not even gonna sort of call these people out because some of them have been on my podcast and I love them all. But there have been instances in bands where there was shit that went on with them, and there's something like, oh, this guy did this to somebody, and that like there was never any drama with Pilot to Gunner. You guys were always clean record, always great albums. No one ever talks shit on you guys.
Yeah, I want that to make it into the podcast. No one has ever said anything bad about Pilot to Gunner.
They haven't. It's the truth.
We've been like pretty free of that, and anything, we also like in our original, lineup, like we were all close friends, like to begin with.
Yeah.
So we were coming at it from that part of it. And I can safely say that like any internal like turmoil came from me. And those guys did a wonderful job of like rolling with it. You know what I mean? So I will say that.
Well, you're the singer. I'm the singer of every band I was ever in, and we're pricks. And we are pricks.
Yeah.
The only one worse than a singer is a drummer.
Yeah, but I think in addition to being pricks as a lead singer, we're also the least talented.
We are the least talented for sure. Yes.
So yeah, so the rest of the band, it's just a win-win for them.
Yeah. So bearing all this in mind, I'm going to come at you with my first question, which is always my first question, which is, Scott Padden, what terrifies you on the most existential level of your being?
My God. What terrifies me on the most existential level of my being? I have this recurring nightmare. This might not be the right answer. I have this recurring nightmare that this whole thing has been a dream and I'm going to wake up into a worse life.
Yeah.
But I mean, what terrifies me? Bees terrify me. But on an existential level, I mean, I don't know. I went through some life changes over the past few years that were pretty major, and I'll be honest, like a lot of that existential dread has gone away.
Yeah.
With those those life changes. And I struggle to even think about what hangs over me. I mean, maybe like, am I coasting? Like, am I like, is life good because I'm coasting? Because I'm just like, I'm doing the easiest shit, the shit that comes easiest to me. Yeah, probably. But I also think maybe that's okay at 47.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't owe anyone anything at this point, really.
No, no, not anymore.
No, no. You've hemmed up everything that, scene wise or what have you. Fuck it. Like, you're doing this for you. I mean, as a musician, what do you really owe the audience other than everything that you actually feel and everything you're actually capable of? I mean, what are you pandering to at this point? It's not like at our age. Is there a scene left that we would recognize? Fuck no, absolutely not.
No, not at all. I don't know. One thing it's funny that you asked that question about like pandering, and of course, like we're nowhere near any situation where we would even have the opportunity to pander if we wanted to. But I think that like I was listening to the record today. I'll admit it. And I think one thing I think that we owe people at this point, like I'm not looking to challenge anybody. I don't think that people in our 30 years of making music or whatever, I don't think people are coming to Pilot to Gunner to be challenged. We're not gonna throw a 5-minute instrumental intro or interlude at them. Like every song on this record is under 3 minutes long, and I am thrilled beyond belief about that. It's a 30-minute record, and I
Yeah.
think that's what I think get to it. Like I think we've made a record that does what the records do that I like to listen to. Get to the good part. Get to, you know what I mean? Get to
Yeah.
that chorus. You know what I mean? And that's what we're doing. And I think we're being honest with these very short songs and about like what is necessary to say what we need to say and do what we need to do. You
And
know what I
both
mean?
both quote unquote singles, very different, both very good, both very well written, because you're not it's not like you're trying to throw these like ridiculous, like overinflated curveballs at anyone. It's solid fucking songwriting and solid fucking songwriting. What would the Beatles do? Write a fucking song. And that's what you did both times over. And the rest of the record basically follows in suit. I mean, there's nothing here that, you know, uh, smacks of the disingenuous. It's all as solid as the last record, as the record before that. You guys were always guilty of writing really solid fucking riffs.
I'll take it.
Always, always. I can't think of a Pilot to Gunner record I didn't like. I mean, this podcast, you could call it fluff or whatever. I don't interview bands I don't like.
That's great.
It's not in my DNA.
Hmm.
Okay, that's that hardcore kid in me from 1988 that, like I'm not capable of pandering to bullshit artists.
I think it also comes across. I think that's pretty obvious when you're interviewing someone if you don't really like their music or whatever. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
I think that's also like to go back to our age. I think again, we're past the point where we're interested in acting like we care about shit that we don't.
No,
Right?
no, it's just not worth my time. I'm just too goddamn old, and
Yep.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just not worth it.
If only it were more noble than that, but it's not. It's just age.
It's just age, really. I mean, when I was 14 years old, there were times when I did a fanzine from age 14 until 18, 19. Yes, I interviewed bands that were cool at the time period because it was what was expected, and I did pander to them.
Sure, of
And fuck
course.
that kid. I don't like that kid. I don't like who I was then. You like who you were at 15 years old?
No.
I was just trying to get laid. That's
Yeah,
pretty much
I was just super zitty.
Mhm. Zitty and trying to get laid and trying to fit into whatever, straight edge or skinhead or whatever clique that we would have been involved in the
Yeah.
confines of that scene.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, no, I just like music. And I do like the ethos that still comes along with what we believed in when we were kids, but without the minutia that surrounds it, I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And that comes across in what you guys are doing now too, because there's just really like, well, you guys never really did kind of buy into genre tropes so much. It was always good, solid rock and roll with a little bit a lilt of, you know, the post this and the emotional that. I got so sick of that those ideas of emo core or, you know, pop this or like it's punk or it's not. And you always made punk music and it was always really good. That hasn't gone away, but what has kind of come to the fore is more of that that straightforwardness and that dedication to craft. You know what I mean? Like that there's 10 songs. They're very, you know, you cut to the quick and you're saying what you want to say and you say it really well and then you get the fuck out of the way. It's a beautiful thing. Very few people still do that.
And I think that's weird because there's more to remember. The more like the
Mhm.
more bells and whistles and the more length that you feel like your shit deserves, the more there is to remember. And just to like to go back to the buying into genres thing, like it's hard enough to write a good song, but then to add the whole thing like this isn't enough in this subgenre. This needs to be more like this. That has always seemed like a lot of work
Yeah.
and with no payoff at all. Because I think it's always been pretty obvious the bands that try to do that to like, and again, it just seems like a whole lot of work with very little return.
And
You know, unless you can get people to really buy into it and you hit that next level. But again, to what end? You know?
and to me the bands that got remembered from that whole era were the bands that didn't give a shit about that stuff. Like we all love Sunny Day Real Estate to a degree. They didn't even sound like Sunny Day Real Estate after Diary. They
Hmm.
changed and changed and changed again and didn't care what anyone else thought of it. Same thing with Get Up Kids. Same like same thing with Fugazi. Like it just the list goes on and on. And you know, I think there does come a point where if you don't abandon what's expected of you, you're basically screwing yourself.
Hmm.
And you guys never pandered to that. I don't think there's a lot of bands, like I said, that came from our generation that adhered to a rank and file and continued with it. And God bless them. Some of them did it really well, but I lost interest. Didn't you?
Sure. Yeah, of course. And just like, you know, the bands you just mentioned, how they evolved, like it's almost, I mean, they had to because they spawned a billion imitators
Hmm.
who if there had been a Diary 2, there were already a million bands making mediocre imitations of that record. So
Yeah.
why put it back out there? You know what I mean? Same thing. Like Get Up Kids records just kept getting better and better as a million bands just like followed behind them and try, you know. So I think that's a natural evolution for those bands that again were doing their own thing
Hmm.
um and and people just like heard it and latched onto it, so it's just really fortunate that those awesome bands all did evolve, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it all kind of happened not simultaneously, but close.
Hmm.
I mean, even you guys, like everybody started branching off like right around that like magical like 2001. You know, everybody just went and you know, like you could get like your alkaline trio over here all the way over to you guys all like and it fragmented in a beautiful way,
Hmm.
in a really really palpable way. Whereas, you know, the past 10 years started to really lag musically. But then about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right before COVID, shit got really good again. Like really good. What was going on with you guys that this record came out? Because it was really a breath of fresh air to hear this. You sent it to me, and I'm like, oh fuck, I'm 16 again. There's something to kind of like sink my teeth into that makes me feel that same shit that got welled up back then? What was going on with you guys?
So, I mean, we did a reissue of Games at High Speeds
Mm-hmm.
on 30 something records. Did a vinyl reissue. It was a 20th anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were in the middle of practicing that record, and we were going to go we're going to go play shows and play the whole record and sell some vinyl and have fun. And we were just finishing up remembering the last song, which I don't think we ever played live once in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the quarantine hit, and obviously everybody got locked inside, and certainly in Brooklyn, like, you were really locked inside.
Yeah.
And we had a few new ones. We were thinking, I don't know, an EP maybe, or a single, or a this or that or whatever. And we just had nothing to do. You know what I mean? Like, some of us were still working, some of us weren't, and we just started working on stuff by ourselves at home. And then as things kind of opened up, we realized, well, oh, the practice space is a place we can go. We can leave our apartments. We can rearrange the room a little bit. We can
Yeah.
turn the mics around so we're not spitting on each other while we're singing. It's a place we still have to be careful, but we can go there and we don't have to be here. And it really lit a fire. And we just decided this is what we're going to do. It's really like, I don't think, like, if COVID hadn't happened, I don't know that there would have been a full length. Certainly, and I don't know, maybe here's an existential dread. We might have half-assed our way through something, which would have really bummed us out ultimately. But
Yeah.
we really put so much into it because there was nothing fucking else to do.
Sure.
Which is the classic thing you hear, like, really great bands will say, like, there was nothing, like, if you like the Replacements, like, we
Oh
had
yeah.
shit jobs, we hated our lives, we had nothing else to do. And obviously I'm not comparing us to them, I never would, but what I'm saying is we finally understood what that was like, what that meant. This is it, like, this is all we have to do with our time, and that's where this came from. And we booked time once we had enough songs, we thought we were ready. We booked time with Jay. Obviously, we need to go see Jay.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was really just, this was totally unplanned. There was not supposed to be a fourth Pilot to Gunner record. The world was not joined in prayer for another Pilot to Gunner record. But it's what we did to pass the time.
Well, I talked to Jay a couple weeks ago, and you guys came up in conversation. So, I mean, it was obviously memorable to him.
Okay, good.
And I didn't bring it up; it just kind of came up. But like the replacements of it all, like Paul Westerberg was a maintenance man and miserable, and ran into these young kids and made some shit happen. It's similar, but you guys already had history. You guys already had kind of like a blueprint, but
Yeah.
you guys went off menu with this one, and in a great way. I'm one of those people, like, you kind of made light of being locked down. I did too, in a very different way. I have a 3-year-old at 46. I got to spend real time with my little boy during lockdown. You got to make a great record. Okay. My kid's awesome, but no one's listening to him right now.
Right. Not right
Get,
now.
yeah, not right now. Who this kid, he's crazy. He could make some great shit. I know he can, I know he's capable of it, but you already have an end product that's, gonna hit. And like, how do you quantify that? Like, well, like, what was the intellectual thrust behind it? What were you trying to get across with the breadth of this record? If there was anything, it could just be like, here it is. Here's what I've been up to for this many years.
You mean, like, was there anything in particular that we might have wanted to say with this
Yes. Yes.
record?
Yes.
I went back and forth about whether to bring this up or not, but I I had to get sober a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was not some proactive thing where I wanted to, adjust my life. Like it was bad,
Yeah.
and so I went through that. Um, I took them with me, unfortunately, for a bit of the ride. And so this is not that kind of record, but what it is, it's just um, I did I made an attempt. I made an attempt at positivity on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether that worked or not, I'm not sure, but I think there was a little bit of like having come through something
It's in
and
there.
trying to universalize it, which is something I always try to do. But when when we were when we were in the middle of recording, Greg, our drummer at the house we were staying in, he came downstairs and we would go home every night and listen to the roughs and everything, especially the vocals. And he came downstairs and he was like, "Man, I just listened to Escape Season." He's like, "That's pretty dark." And I was like, "God damn it, that's supposed to be one of the positive ones." you know? I'm like, and clearly I didn't land the plane, but I think just having come through something, which I think can also translate to just again, like how long you've been doing this and just kind of what's important and again, just being honest about things. And I know that's vague and I know that's like, that feels like a dodge, but that's really what it is. Like, and again, to go back to your question about what we owe people, I just feel like there's an honesty on this record about what we are allowed to talk about, what we are allowed to play. And I think we stuck to that.
Yeah. And I picked that up because I've been in recovery for over 25 years. I've fallen off. No, that's what we do. Heroin, opioids, all the way across the
Shit.
board. I'm your universal addict, and
Well, glad to have you here, man.
yeah, I'm glad to be here with you, and I'm glad you're here. And it's this seems to be a recurring thing with people of our ilk, of our like where we are in life at this age group, from the music scene we came from. There, you know, albeit there was a very massive straight edge contingent, there were a lot of us that were just hiding out, doing what we did in the midst of all of that. And, you know, we could hide in plain sight almost, which is really weird. But there's a lot of guys our age that are singing about and extolling the virtues of recovery. And people wouldn't really know it because you're not spelling it out. It's all within, poetic license. But I definitely picked up, the uplift of vanquishing the adversary, as it were. Like the obstacle, as we call it, within the recovery community. I could pick that up. I felt that.
And that's great. And I did my best to skip to that part because I don't want to fucking make those three guys sit there and play songs like about the dark part and the shit that I created and the shit I caused. That's not fair to them. That's not their story at all.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I did try to lyrically and I think melodically as well is like keep it to the redemption part of that. Keep it to the like the coming through it because then I feel that's just more relatable. I feel like it's less selfish. Maybe only a little less selfish, but
Well,
you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's not their thing and they shouldn't have to get up there and play songs that are fucking depressing about being and also I'm sorry, but those songs about all the darkness and addiction and everything, like that's all the same to me. I
yeah,
don't know. Maybe that's like callous, but like that's just all the same to me, you know?
yeah,
Especially once you've gone through it.
yeah,
It's the same fucking story.
yeah. It's the same. It's the same song, but you get to own that too, no matter what. I mean, yes, they're in the band, but that's still your lyrics and that's still your experience to translate to the rest of the world. If they're willing to go along for that ride, amazing. But I do applaud the fact that you're not wallowing in the romance of your depression, because so many people do that and it's very tiresome. It's very tiresome. The Jim Carroll of it all, which I love Jim Carroll, but
Sure.
it's just like, oh, I'm gonna basketball diaries the fuck out of this. Like,
Right.
we've been there, man. We
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
All the people who died. Yeah, we know. We fucking know. What happens next? What happens when you drop all that shit and you're trying to build a family? You're trying to keep a band together. You're trying to write a song.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. That's the story that everybody wants to know about the win, about the redemption.
It's true, and I think there's a little bit of like it's kind of lame a little bit. Like there's no it's not rock and roll to talk about how good things are.
Fuck them.
But the other thing is like I always start from with the songs. The music gets written first,
Mhm.
and then probably some gibberish lyrics to get a melody because I want the song to kind of dictate the tone and what it might be about. Like I don't want some you never want to have like a pop song where you're talking about slitting your wrists unless that's the novelty that you're going for. That's
Unless
the
you're in Life of Agony, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I think helped me avoid that wallowing was like a lot of these songs are poppy and a lot of and they just naturally went to a place of triumph is too strong a word, but that overcoming, you know what I mean? Like
That's not
coming
too strong a word. That's very triumphant because as much as you say poppy, I say rock and roll.
sure,
You
sure.
know what I mean?
I
And
mean,
that
yeah.
where that replacements comes in, but go ahead.
I just like our choruses, I think are pop choruses, and maybe that's just because I'm so deep in the world of like two guitars, drums, and bass. But like I I think they're really and I mean that in a good way. I'm not
Mhm.
apologizing for that. I would
Mm.
never. I just feel like if you're writing rock songs, you don't have choruses, you're wasting everyone's time.
You
You know what I
you
mean?
you just don't understand the Beatles, apparently.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there is that, and I bring it up a lot on this podcast. We all, no matter how much we want to say we're the Clash and the Ramones, we are as much the children of, you know, McCartney. We're
Yep.
especially if you're a musician, there is no escaping the ubiquity of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And yeah, listen to the Get Up Kids, listen to you guys. It's there. It's in
Hmm.
the sauce.
Absolutely. It can't not be there.
Yeah.
Even if you've got bands that say they hate the Beatles, like sorry, but it's the oxygen you're breathing
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're holding a guitar.
If you hate the Beatles, basically, like, fuck you. Just like saying, oh, I hate the Beach Boys, but I like Jimmy Eat World's early stuff. Guess
Sure.
what? Guess what, baby? Guess
Right.
what? Same shit, different
Yep.
pile.
Human centipede.
Yeah.
You're getting the Beach Boys whether you whether you like it or not. I gotta
First
remember
one eats
that.
the shit, the last one
I
gets
gotta remember that.
it. But that's the truth. I mean, from the Beach Boys to the Ramones is a very short hurdle.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
even the gentleman who'd run Sire Records, Seymour
Stein.
Stein, said it. He was like, "No, they're like the Beach Boys." He was right.
Hmm.
He was right. The beginning, the birth of punk rock was basically just a continuation of the purity of rock and roll. So, if we continue in the vein of the purity of rock and roll, are we not being as punk as humanly possible? Yes, of course.
Mm, yeah.
So, I mean, in that regard, this record that you've given to us is very much purely and utterly punk rock because it is purely and utterly everything that's great about rock and roll. It's part and parcel. It's very simple, but I mean, the Beach Boys and the like were not writing about the same sort of malaise that you were experiencing.
Right.
But you put it in such a way that it's not spelling it out, which is very difficult to put across as a songwriter. And I, am a fellow songwriter. No one's listening to my record, but they're listening to yours. And to be frank, you put it in such a way that it's relatable. And is that something that you kind of set out to do? Like I'm going to kind of make this not so spelled out. I'm not going to put it in your face like this happened to me and then this happened and then that's how it played out. Was that kind of like a thought in your head, or did it just kind of come out that way?
So when we first started, when Patrick and I moved to New York, he and I were in more of a shoegazy band with our drummer in college. When
Mhm.
he and I played bass, but when he and I moved here, we didn't really know who was going to sing. It turned out to be me. I had just started guitar. I was just starting, like, oh God, that's when I think back to like when I first started trying to sing. It was painful, but the thing that I was just unbelievably uncomfortable with was the "I, me, my, mine" in the
Mm.
lyrics. It just like I have no problem with anybody else doing that. I just like I couldn't do it. I could not do it. So us
Mm.
together became what I was doing in order to just avoid I'm in pain. I did this. I feel like I just couldn't do it. I think I think that maybe I was too young to realize it at the time was that effort I was making towards making something relatable and universal and not just about myself. And I
Mm.
think that also helped me avoid things that were maybe too specific to me. And I think maybe then not important enough to write a song about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that originally, like I said, arose out of just like I could not stand there in front of a microphone and say I, me, my, mine over and fucking over again. I couldn't. And I think that that's where that started. And I think just it was instinct, and that's why I try to walk that line between like spelling it out, but also not hiding in obscurity. I don't know that I like walk it successfully all the time, but like that's what I'm trying for.
I think it comes across, but what do you think it is that kind of turned you off to the, ownership of whatever it was you were trying to put across? Was there like a certain band or song or something that turned you off to the, and it is really self-indulgent, but the self-indulgence of the lyricism involved in like I, me, my, like I did this happened to me, I want to die, blah 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 blah.
I think I think it wasn't about any other bands. Like, um, I think I already felt indulged, like supremely indulged, that I had become the singer of the band because I feel like I sort of fell into it. I fell into this thing of being the lead singer and guitar player in a rock band in New York City with people who I was friends with and close with. Like that is a dream that like a lot of people try really hard for, and it was handed to me, and I felt like to indulge myself any further beyond that was just like unforgivable.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's kind of where that came from. I can't say that I can point to, I mean, but also like for me it was the Clash, it was, I mean, obviously Jawbox. I don't even think I need to say that. And
Yeah.
there isn't a whole lot of self-indulgence in those lyrics at all, and maybe I just took that in without really knowing it. You know what I mean? There's no sad sack shit fucking anywhere.
Mhm.
And I think I just kind of, without knowing it, just internalized that.
Well, yeah, because you're talking about two very glaring examples of
Yeah.
socialist bands, and not in politics, but in the way they operated. Because the Clash were that was like not everyone kind of was involved in everything with that band, and it's the same thing with Jawbox. I mean, Jay didn't just rule over that with an iron fist. You're talking about a group of very talented individuals, up to and including his own wife in the band.
Yeah.
So there's a reciprocity within the confines of both groups. I can understand where you're coming from with that, but at what point does the reciprocity of the confluence of individuals get apexed by, oh my, I have no mouth and I want to scream? You know what I mean? Like, where does one begin and the other end for you? Just in the nuance of the lyricism?
I mean, I think that again, just I've been fortunate enough where no one's ever second guessed my lyrics. That's never been a thing. And
Mm,
I've heard about that in other bands, whether they were huge bands, whether they were bands we might have been on tour with, where the lead singer or the lyricist will say that like he has to run them by the other guys contribute, and that just like lyrics by committee, like democratizing the lyric, that sounds fucking awful. That sounds
yeah, it
like a
does.
recipe for some really terrible shit.
Yeah, it does.
Um,
But I'm the
so the,
lyricist in every band I was ever in, so of course I'm selfishly saying, "Yeah, fuck that." But I've never been in a situation, band-wise where that's been an issue. Everyone kind of just said, "You're the English major, run with it." But
it's
in the
good for
same token,
something.
yeah, it's good for fucking something because I'm a plumber by trade. Thanks, 4 years and bachelor's.
Yeah. I think that like I knew those guys, they were letting me do whatever I wanted. You know, the various members that have been in the band, they were letting me do what I wanted. There was no quality control. There was no second guessing. And so that knowing myself, I'm surprised that I didn't just like half-ass it, but that was one area where I was like, shit, there's no one looking over my shoulder. It has to be me looking over my shoulder. I have to make this really good. And so that's like, I don't know. That's just sort of the trust that I get from those guys. I use it to like make sure I'm doing the most I can with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you do have an economy of words that kind of like
Economy of words, always.
you do, like, there's no bullshitting around where you over intellectualize, which I'm fucking guilty of. It's economical, it's well done, but it's very economical to the point, and it lends itself to choruses. Okay, you don't fuck around, and that's appreciated coming from someone who kind of like bogs everything down in the minutia of the spoken word.
Sure.
Like I'm too Faulkner for my own fucking good sometimes,
It's
and
easy to do and it's attractive. You know
mhm,
what I
it
mean?
is. It's sexy, but it sucks. No
I
one wants to
think
fucking hear that.
I think, you know, the other thing that I think it's just I lucked out is doing gibberish lyrics first.
Yeah,
That means that your melody is sort of locked in with the music. And so if there is something that I want to say, well, I need to figure out how to say that within a certain number of syllables, a certain like rhythm. Like,
yeah,
so maybe I might have had this way I thought was the perfect way to say it. Bad news, Scott. It's got to be said like this in this amount of time, you know? And
yeah.
I really like that.
I didn't
Um,
figure that out until years later, like when I got out of doing metallic, like experimental, jazzy, brutal hardcore stuff and got more into like, rocking punk. I didn't freestyle lyrics like just singing syllables, rhyming, like not even rhyme and meter, just staying in time with the music. You know, freestyling to create a sonic palette instead of pulling the sheet up and being like, I gotta say this. I came from that school first and then learned how to become an actual musician 18 years after I got into making music. Yeah, like
18. Oh my God.
legitimately, because I was 13 when I was in my first band and I was
Oh, no
already
shit.
barking and punching myself in the face in 1988. But,
Yeah.
you know, we're the same age. So,
Right.
we come from that same era and that same idea. But, songwriting didn't even occur to me until many years later. And that songwriting is very like it's very forward in everything you guys have done. There's never been like that misstep where it's like, all right, this is the crazy ass record. This is the record where you never got off course. And you say there was no quality control as far as your bandmates, but there was some kind of quality control going on because you guys didn't get that far off course.
Oh, musically, absolutely major quality control with the music. I was speaking strictly lyrically.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
even even melodically, sometimes those guys were like, "Oh, try this, try that," and they were always right.
Mm,
But I was speaking strictly when it comes to lyrics. As far as the music goes, like major major quality control, and it was all four of us, and it was everyone that's been a member of the band throughout the years. That's one thing that's always been like second guess everything. um I will say there have been times where a song is done because we're just like, oh, we're done working on that. It just we sort of stopped working on it. And I think for this record, every song I can say with confidence that we did not stop until we were finished with the
right.
writing of the song. Were there do I hear things I would have gone back and maybe done differently? Of course. I'm an
Every fucking
asshole. Of
time, dude,
course.
though. Really.
Yeah.
Every time you release anything, you're going to pick out, just an intonation, something that just drives you nuts.
Yeah.
It's par for the course.
Yeah.
And
But luckily that quality control has always been really well received and balanced, and let's try this, let's try it like that, now let's try it like that. If there was no rush, that was the other thing with this record. It's like no one was waiting for it. There was no rush. Like we gave ourselves plenty of time before we went down to see Jay. We demoed everything in the room. Like we did things really right this time, and it was nice.
because
It
it
was
didn't
really nice.
this record does have something that's really different from every other one, and I hasten to call it like an adult vibe or a mature vibe, because that's not what it is. But there is something very mellifluous yet concise.
Mellifluous yet
Yeah,
concise.
yeah, that absolutely. That's the way I would put that. It's very melodic. It's very beautifully done, but there's also something very punchy about it. Like, fuck you, there's nothing left to lose. This is what we're
Sure.
doing, but it's going to be pretty, motherfucker. And that's the way I think of it. So mellifluous and
Concise. No, I mean there's an element like we're grown-ups,
Mhm.
and that's how that's why we write songs. The way we put it is big boy pants. Like
Yeah.
that's a that part that's a big boy pants part. Like put on our big boy pants, we wrote a big boy pants part. Like that's our way of saying that's a grown-up approach to that part of a song. You know what I mean?
You're serving
Which
the
is
song.
sort of making we're serving the song, but we still get to make fun of it. You
Yeah.
see how that works?
Yeah.
We get to pretend that's not what we're doing, but that fucking is what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of service to songcraft. And like, who's really paying attention to that anymore? I mean, I could think of a few, and most of them come on this podcast because I've been blessed with, having a line towards bands that actually are fucking matter at this point. And that's few and far between, but I've been blessed with it. You guys come on, you guys, like, people haven't even heard the length and breadth of this record yet at this point. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing out yet.
Wait until they fucking hear this because eh, who from our age group is still making music that matters? A few people who've been on here, but not very many. Like, where's I wish you guys and Ann Beretta would be on tour together right now. Like, thank God Hot Water Music is still a band. Chamberlain's still a band, but
Yep.
everybody else kind of fell off. And
I
and
mean,
you have to
it,
wonder, like, where do we fit now?
yeah. I mean, it's like we've said, we're the same age. Like this shit is not easy to do at our
Mhm.
age, and hot water, just like nothing but respect for those guys for just continuing to do it. But I mean, we did 5 days back in October. We went out, we did one night in Chicago with our friends Heavy Seas, Then we did 3 nights with the Get Up Kids, or maybe 4, 3 or 4, and then a night with Quicksand. And it was just friends, and that was a lot. And we still like we did it like grown-ups. We did it SUV, trailer, nice hotels every night, and it was still, I felt it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how these guys do it. I will say that like I didn't envy the bands we were opening for. Like I really like the Get Up Kids. I really like Quicksand, and I'm really glad they're still doing it. I'm really glad people came out, because this was like a post quarantine show. This was, for a lot of people at those shows, this was the first show they had gone to in years.
Yeah.
But my point is, like, there was nothing about it that made me think like, oh, I wish we were out for a month, or I wish we were doing like 5 nights. I was good. I was ready to, I had a blast the whole time.
Yeah.
But when we woke up the next morning in in Detroit for the drive home, I was like, I'm ready.
Yeah.
That was great. I'm ready. So yeah, the bands that keep doing it, man. And that question, I have to imagine, you bring up Hot Water, you bring up Chamberlain, and we know that those bands matter to a lot of people, but they're human beings, and you have to imagine they still have those conversations in their heads. Do we still matter?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that would be tough to have at our age, in a hotel room away from your family outside of Omaha. Maybe you did just play to 500 people, but that doesn't stop the conversation, I have to imagine, right?
Yeah.
And so,
And that's the real existential dread. Do I still matter?
So.
Is what I'm doing and what my soul is bringing into existence still, does it still matter to anyone? And fortunately for you, the answer is fucking yeah, a resounding yes. Resounding yes. Because there's still a great label that still wants to release your fucking shit. So are you winning? Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you,
Oh yeah. I'm absolutely.
do you still miss your family while you're gone? Of course. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I at this point in my life, at the age we're at, do I think I could go on tour right now with a 3-year-old? No, I couldn't. I'd quit the band first because I don't want to miss my 3-year-old.
Totally.
But my wife is so fucking cool that she'd be like, okay, we're going on tour. Oh well. That's how dope my wife is. But not everyone's in that position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of it's not just talent anymore at our age, which the younger guys, yeah, they can just take off because they're not.
It's okay. It's okay to be broke in your 20s.
Yeah, it's
right?
amazing to be broke in your 20s because
It
you
is amazing to be broke in your 20s.
It is. I did it. I remember it was great. I had a blast. I had a blast being in a band that didn't matter to anyone, and we toured and did the thing. But once I was 25 years old and already had a child, guess what? Done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, where we're at, it's lightning has to strike twice. You have to be really good at what you do, and you have to be in a situation where you could actually execute this shit.
Yeah. And, that's another thing to go back to, like, feeling lucky, is that, at the time, all 4 of us were self-employed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real luxury to just, like, I mean, I don't think that tour was really fully confirmed until like a month before. And I was able to tell my clients, I'm going away for a week. You can deal with it. We were very fortunate to be able to do that. And not lose money, and not any, we were well aware of that.
Yeah.
I think that's also why the conversation of do we matter just never popped up, because like we were on fucking vacation.
Yeah.
We were on a fucking vacation that all we had to do was work for 30 minutes every night,
But
So we felt very fortunate.
It never occurred to you guys that there was a fervent audience still waiting in the wings for everything, every piece of output that you'd given to us. That never occurred to you.
I don't think I've ever let myself think that. I don't know.
I get it.
That's just so tricky. You know what I mean? Like you start
Yeah.
to just start advertising to yourself, you know? Um, I don't know. Yeah, it was just again just something I wasn't ever really all that comfortable with.
Right.
But again, that also makes you at these shows in October every night. There were two, three, four people who did come up who were like, "I saw you guys in 2001. I still have your record. I saw you were opening," or like, "Oh yeah, you know, I like these guys, but I came to see you guys." And I'm serious, like two or three. I'm not saying it was anything significant, but like that when that's enough, that's fucking amazing.
That's perfect. Yeah.
You know what I
Of
mean?
course.
Like, I'm just like, man, you fucked up because now I'm talking to you for the rest of the night.
But I don't think there's anyone in our age group who was involved in our scene that could have really escaped you guys either, because it was plainly obvious who was making the good music at the time, and it was you guys. It was, Hot Water Music. It was the Get Up Kids. It was Jimmy Eat World before. Even after they went their way, I still think they made
Sure.
great music. I really do. I'm not going to shit on them. They made great music.
No, Bleed American is an amazing song.
Oh, it's that whole record was great.
Yeah,
Even the one after I loved. But yes, we were married to the, static prevails of and clarity of things, because those two were undeniably brilliant. But you guys were right on par with that. You were right in that, like with Mineral, and you couldn't get away from it. It was right there. It was a part of the zeitgeist of who and what we were. So there was never a question in my mind that there would be an audience if you guys were to make that next transition to tour. And like I said, there was never like this breakup rumor, or like, oh, shit happened with them, or the bass player shot his uncle, or whatever. There was
no,
never
that never
any of
happened.
that. That never happened. There was never any of that stuff. You guys lucked out maybe in that fashion, but
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Like we lived hard. And I think we're fortunate that nothing like that ever really happened.
well, yeah, because you weren't creeps. But there was a I'm not gonna say too much more, because like I said, there have been a lot of people on this podcast who I respect greatly, who've been in bands with people who did some really fucked up shit.
Sure.
So I'm not gonna get into it, but you guys kind of got away with it. You got away with not having that person in the band. But with all that touring behind you and all those years, decades behind you, what is the single greatest achievement in your mind of pilot to gunner? What is that? What is that major benchmark, that high water mark for you guys?
Man. Um I know I sound like a broken record here, but like I don't know, the achievement is just that we were able to do it. Um just that we somehow like pulled it off,
Mhm.
like um it was ridiculous. I mean, that in our 20s, that shit was ridiculous. Just always broke in vans that should not have been on the highway for, for like 6 months out of the year for years. Like,
Yeah.
how did we get away with all that? Um, I think that I think that getting to do all that we did, I think that the fact that I can say that like we toured the United States more times than I can remember,
Mhm.
the fact that we got to go to Europe a bunch of times, all the way across to Russia, most of the countries in Europe. We got to go to Australia twice. Like that's the achievement. And those were mostly just based on meeting people and connecting with people. That's something that I'm pretty proud of.
Yeah.
And just the fact we're still in touch with these people today, like 30 something is run by Matthias, who was our booking agent back in the early 2000s, and we
Yeah.
stayed in touch, and like still tons of friends down in Australia, tons of friends all across Europe, people that we still see frequently. Like, that's kind of what it was all based, like all of our success, as it were, was based on friendships and friends of friends and connecting with people. And I think that's something that's real to me. um I don't know that anybody ever got, did business with Pot Gunner thinking they were going to get rich. At least I hope they didn't. But
Yeah, but like I have to say, like, you know, big ups to Matthias, because he really has built something incredible. And I think, like, it's an aside to what we're talking about, but honestly, who's doing anything quite like what he's doing right now, with not only putting out new records, but reissuing stuff that came out on major labels, and like really putting forth that effort and not getting rich off of it, just doing it because he loved this stuff, and he's just making it available again. Who does that? It's fucking
yeah,
amazing.
and it's the same with Fred and Frank at Arctic Rodeo. Like
Oh yeah.
all those reissues of Discord records and just beloved records, and putting out the side projects of bands, like that is pure love, and
Yeah.
just to again, like, that's the achievement to me, to be associated with people like that who we admire. That's the achievement. That's the success.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, Frederick is what a fucking great guy, right?
yes,
Wow.
absolutely. That last record, Guilty Guilty, like
Mhm.
nobody was looking to put that out, but Joseph Grillo just got in touch with Fred, and Fred had a trip planned over here. We hung out, we got a great dinner, and he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this." He loved the record, and we all met up and had a great time. Like, yeah,
And that
that's the
record sold
achievement.
through very well for him, might I add. It really did. It really did. He wouldn't have continued to do it otherwise. I mean, as much as you love who you are championing, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yep,
And
yep.
it still happens. So obviously there's a demand.
Hmm.
And you guys never really fell out of demand either. I mean, as much as you want to believe that you're not as desirable as you guys actually are, because we're all like that. We're wired that way. We're punk
Yeah,
kids.
right.
We're
Yes.
wired that way, but you guys were never that cast off band, that aside band, that band that, everybody's like, yeah, they're okay. Everyone had an opinion. I would rather be in the band that everyone had an opinion about, good, bad, than indifferent.
Yeah,
You know?
there were numerous occasions where we would be in the middle of the country. Maybe we've played that town before, maybe we haven't, and there's like pretty much nobody at the show, and somebody would come up. There's one guy in particular, and this happened more than once. He was like, "I flew here from Oklahoma City to see you guys." One of maybe 10 people at the show, bought everything, went back to his hotel. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? And that happened, like, not, I can't say frequently, but that happened like enough where I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
Um, and every time it was just, I just couldn't believe it, and I wanted I wanted to buy those people drinks, but I was fucking broke and I couldn't.
Right. Right. And it's not on you to, kind of, I guess, put forth that effort, because you already did by inspiring that in them, but it's still great that you would actually have that thought in your head, if that makes sense. But I guess what I really want to get to is, you're let's go back to you're in your 20s, you're on tour, you're pre that person who had the wherewithal to just say, all right, I need to get clean, I need to take myself seriously. Who was that person, I guess, before your self-realization that you were fucking yourself up? I think that's the most important question I could ask anyone.
I can tell you with absolute confidence that person was a fucking asshole. And I'm not saying that I'm not looking for anyone to convince me otherwise. I am not exaggerating. That person was a true fucking asshole. Um, that's the answer.
I I,
Um,
I don't agree, but here's the thing. W- w- I guess I could back it up with this. What was it that what is it that makes you think that person was an asshole? Because there's an inherent confusion and self-loathing that leads one down the path to make them think they're that fucking asshole. Okay?
well, I mean, I also want to make it clear that like I'm not saying that with any kind of smirk, and I'm not saying that with any ounce of pride at all, because I know that, oh man, you know me, I say what I think. I'm an asshole. I That is not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that like the when you are actually self-destructive, when you are actually that selfish and that deep in that life and deep in that, just like treating yourself so questionably, and just of course treating the people around you questionably, like you're just, yeah, I was just that guy was not a good person at all. And I'm not bummed out about it. I've had years now to like process all that and to make amends with, capital A and lowercase a, with enough people. But like
Yeah.
that guy was not fun. It was not fun for those guys to be on tour with me. And again, like not in some romantic, oh, isn't this wild and crazy? Like, sure, we managed to have fun, but it was not fun. It was not fucking fair to those guys either.
But they stuck
Um,
it out. So
they stuck it out.
there's something about you that they love in a very
Again,
deep and meaningful way. So the
I'm
person you
lucky.
just explained to me is not who that person really was. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
there is that person that was worth loving and saving and being a part of. So the person that really existed back then wasn't an asshole. That was a very affected and very sad person, not an
oh,
asshole,
very sad person for sure.
you
Very
know?
sad person, absolutely. Like if you had asked me that existential, like what terrifies me on an existential level, like back in those days in my 20s,
Mhm.
I would have been too overwhelmed. Like I wouldn't have been able to answer the question because just my entire just life was just dread of
Yeah.
something shitty I had just done, something I was ignoring that was about to like drop on me, or something that I was going to do to disappoint someone or fail at something. That was it. That was every day. Um, it is no way to live.
No, no. But I mean, I can tell you in a great amount of you know, unmitigated honesty that the way I had been when I was exactly like that came from a lot of really vulgar baggage. I didn't conjure this of my own accord. There was a lot of, physical violence and other violence that I don't really need to put out there for people to understand what I'm talking about,
Sure.
uh, that inspired that. And I think people like us who go through that kind of shit and turn to substance abuse to dull it, we're affected in a very, very different way than people who just had like, dad was a little handsy when he was drunk type of way. It was like there was a lot affecting you. And in order to carry that through into a public persona, into a musical persona, that takes a toll on its own. So you do kind of search for ways to dumb it down. So to call yourself an asshole in the midst of whatever inspires it, be it a past or be it a genetic predilection, I don't think it's fair to call yourself an asshole, really. I think it's fair to say you didn't handle it properly, you
That's
know?
fair. And for me, I think it was genetics more than I think it was genetics. There's
Yeah,
nothing I can point to in my
yeah,
past. But yeah, how I handled it, I think that's we can agree on that.
yeah,
It was handled poorly.
yeah. Not an asshole though, because like even like past notwithstanding, my dad drunk, grandfather drunk, and it goes and it goes and it goes. So it kind of gets passed down to you. But on the lighter end of that spectrum, we also get passed down these beautiful things like our predilections to make music or create art or to be inspired by the arts. Was there that in your life too? Like mom and dad were artists or musicians or anything like that?
I think my parents were just generally supportive of things that we wanted to do. They had a killer record collection, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Killer record collection. I very young, as soon as I was able to operate the record player, was listening their Beatles records, their Stones records, the Who records. Like, um, I think that I had friends who were creative. Um, and when I didn't start playing until I got to college, and I honestly like I was going down a path very quickly freshman year. I was hanging out with the wrong people, and there were two people across the hall who I noticed were coming home at 1 in the morning with amps and drums, and it was Patrick and Kurt, our original drummer, and that's how I met them. Was like sort of taking an interest. I scrabbled together $75 and bought a bass because they didn't have a bass player, and that's how we started playing music together. So like I started to keep myself from like going down a path which arguably I might have gone down just maybe 20 years later anyways, but it didn't happen then. You know what I mean? Like I just knew that like these were people creating something, these were people spending their time wisely, and that's how we met. Um and I think yeah, it was just that's how I wanted to spend my time. And seeing people carrying their instruments around, and I was like, oh, this is something I can do that. Because
Yeah.
not even going to punk rock shows, that didn't get it through my head that that was something anyone could do. Those were still people, and I know a lot of people will say like, "Well, I saw the Jackson 5 and I saw Kiss, and that was a big thing that I could never attain. And then I went to a punk rock show, and that was something I could do." Not for me. Those
Yeah.
That was still people on stage. That was still people who are really good at their instruments. These were people with their drums not in cases and the drumsticks falling out and their guitar under their arm like that. Oh, I can
Yeah.
do that. They're barely doing it. I can do that. You know?
And that's the thing, like everybody has the romantic story of like, and this was the aha moment. But my romantic story is kind of even it's similar to yours, but even before because my parents, I inherited their record collection. And our parents are of the same age group. My dad was a Vietnam vet. My mom was at Woodstock as a hippie, and I'd gotten all their records. And yes, the Stones and the Doors and the Beatles, very proficient. But then my dad's T-Rex records, that was my aha moment. Like, he's playing 3 fucking chords, man. It's really great. It's really big, but it's really 3 chords. And that was Mark Bolan was my aha moment. Like, and then my dad took me to see The Who in '83 with the Clash opening, and it fucked me
Whoa.
completely up. Fucked me completely.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I was a punk from there on in, but there's always that very, very small kernel of what sets us on a path that seems so much larger in scope compared to what set it off.
Yeah.
Seeing a bunch of guys across the hallway, like barely carrying their instruments into a room, like, yeah, I could see that. That's
Yeah. And I'm not kidding. I was like, they're just barely doing it. I can just barely do it. I can do that. And I've been just barely doing it ever since.
oh my god, I'm gonna die. So what's on deck for you guys next? Because you played a couple shows, you got the record coming out. What's kind of like the grand plan thereafter? I mean, you got 2 singles set to go. Where does that carry you next?
I mean, we gotta. This is my job, and I'm not doing it. Just book some shows.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like booking around people's schedules and everything. It's just getting off my ass and doing it. Which still some things you hit 47 and you're responsible in so many ways that you weren't. And that is just one thing I haven't done it. I have no reason why. There's nothing holding me back.
Yeah.
It's just maybe I'll do it tonight. Maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is the moment where I'll reach back out to people and be like, hey, just seeing like, got any nights? I'll put the bill together. Just call some friends. That's pretty much it. If our friends decide they want us to come out and support them on a couple dates in the Northeast or the East Coast or whatever, yeah, we'll do that again.
Yeah.
Totally. There will not be any like headlining US tours ever again. But if Fred and Matthias are like, you guys want to come over here for a few weeks? Fuck yeah, man. I'll go play to 5 people in Germany. I have no problem with that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's 5 people in Akron that I don't really have any interest in doing anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. I mean, that would be great to go do. And I think, but that's kind of it. Like the record's getting made. I've got the test pressings, sitting over there. We're gonna get our first box of records. Like that's it. That's enough. That's enough for me. I wanna pull it out of there. I want to look at it. I want to smell it. I want to put it on. Like that's I'm good. I'm good.
There's something about smelling a record, right?
Yeah. Oh, and Matthias is doing cassettes. We've never done a cassette before. And Patrick is doing the layouts now. Like again, I just think all of this, what I do like at as far as what's next or whatever, I do like that at 47, all of this is enough. Like
Yeah.
I like being excited to open up my email and there's the layout for the cassette. Like I think that's so fucking cool.
Of course it is. Of course it is, because there was let's go back 30 years. There was no rock stardom in this. That was never the goal. That was never the thing, like, we're gonna be massive. We're
Yeah.
gonna be Weezer or whatever. That was never a thing in our scene, in our ethos. It was
Yeah.
just someone's gonna hear us, and some kid in a bedroom is gonna get it, and it's gonna save their life. And that's the important part. And you guys have already done that, and you've done it, and you've done it, and you've done it. At this point now, it's just, can we still put lightning in a bottle? And I'm here to tell you, you've done it. I've heard the
Awesome.
record. You've done it again. You've done it again. So at the very least, you can be steadfast in the idea that you haven't lost a fucking thing.
That's good to hear.
You
Because
know?
you never know.
Well, no, you don't. But when it's the same kind of group of guys believing in one another,
Yeah.
that community can't really fail, can it? As long as there's a belief in the core cause of what we're all doing.
Yeah.
That.
And as long as all 4 of you want the same thing, which is
Mhm.
again, I all the other guys feel the same way. You know what I mean? It's just like
Yeah.
we're getting a record pressed. That is amazing. We're getting a cassette made. That is amazing. We got to go out in October. Amazing. We might go more, like everything is just I'm not saying the expectations are low. I'm just saying our expectations are so reasonable that anything above them is just incredible. You know what I mean? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that was the point. That was always the point. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going into this thinking that I'm going to be a cultural touchstone. I just want to give something to the culture. And I think that's what made the place we came from very special, in the fact that rock stardom or, any sort of whatever, like accolades weren't really a part of it. It wasn't built into the culture. What was built into the culture is, am I a part of this? Am I a real part of this?
Yeah.
And that's admirable. And that's important. That's more important than, I mean, let's dispense with, like, yeah. If you guys were to, win a Grammy tomorrow and get millions of dollars, amazing. Love the shit out of it. But that's a 1 in a million thing. That's like hitting the lottery. In truth, if you are giving something back to the community you're from, you are a part of the organism and a viable part of the organism. You were never not a part of that organism. So at the very least, that's admirable.
Yeah, but I mean, admirable and important aside, like that's the only we didn't know any other way. There was no other way. It was just
No.
like, oh, we want to play too. Hey, that's just going out and going on tour. There was nothing beyond that for us. It was just the tour was the thing.
Mhm.
Understanding, of course, that in the real world of real music and real artists, like the touring is it's a mechanism, it's a device for
Mhm.
something larger to happen. That was always strange explaining that to people who not in the world that you and I came from, that like
Yeah.
this is not a career path, but it's not a hobby. It's not quite a hobby because our lives are centered around it, but it is not a career path. And that was a hard thing for coworkers and relatives or whoever to understand. Even if they wanted to, it was just not something, they're like, but you have a CD and it's in stores and Rolling Stone reviewed you guys, and you still had to be like, yeah, that's not the world that we're operating in. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And then of course a lot of them think like you're just saying that.
No.
Which what do you do at that point in the conversation? You know what I mean?
And it's just like,
But
believe, you have to just at that point say, believe what you want, but
totally, yeah, yeah,
this is our world, this is our community. And do we bust out of it? Probably not. Does it matter? Definitely not.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely not.
hmm No, I had a cousin come see us play, and we were opening for someone, and so there was like three, four, 500 people, and he's like, you guys, like you made it. He's like, I can't believe like you guys, you're famous, and I was about to correct him, and Patrick was like, it's amazing. You're right. That's the only answer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
really? Why? Why would I like? I can't believe that I was gonna like set him straight for what? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't
Um,
disabuse someone of the notion that you're good. You
right.
just don't.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I think that's really that's really where you kind of have to leave it with any sort of fandom that you garner. If someone is of the notion that you're something greater than you believe you are, for you to disabuse them of that notion, no matter how little you feel of yourself, you're robbing them, not you. And you're not being less humble by allowing them to feel that way, because that's their journey.
I'm gonna tell you a shitty story that it's not horrifying, but like we were so so a friend of a friend from the UK had come over to the US to visit, and I was by at that point playing in this band I Hate Our Freedom,
Mhm.
um, with some friends, Joseph Grillo from Garrison
Yeah.
and Godfire's Man and everything, and my friend Justin, and at the time it was Steve Sanderson was the drummer, and she was just like, I heard that you guys are all in a band together. Like, oh my God, like you and Steve and Joseph and Justin, and like, I can't believe it. I go, yeah, it's a real super group. And she was like, to me it is. That's, like that was 20 years ago. And I remember it like that stings that I said that. And it was an attempt. It was like you just said, this misguided fucking attempt to like correct someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why? And when she said it is to me, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I instantly understand who is the asshole here, and it's me. You know what I mean? And and obviously she was totally gracious about it, but it's just it's
The first instinct is always to be self-effacing, though, is it not?
yeah, yeah.
Just to be like, yeah, I'm going to take the piss right out of myself because I have such a low opinion of me that whatever you think, you're fucking wrong. But you're still somewhere in the back of your mind, you're telling them, no, you're wrong. I suck. But you still want them to think you're fucking great. And that's the really messed up part. So you're kind of better off just allowing people to believe whatever they believe about you, no matter what you think, because they're probably more right than you'll ever be. And that's the scary part, because the beholder always knows what beauty truly is, not the beholden. You know what I mean? So, what do you want to kind of leave us with about this record? What is the what's the real thrust? What's the real lyrical thrust outside of what we've already talked about? Because there is so much redemption built into this. There's so much emotional uplift, even though there is a lot of darkness in it. If there were one thing people could walk away from it with, not just that withstanding, if there were a message to be like, definitively, here's this, do this, what have you, what would that be? I lost you. I can't hear you.
There we go. I wish that I had something really fantastic to say to this. I mean, what I can say is just the we were talking about earlier, like, how did this record get made? Like, completely, it was not planned for. It wasn't anything, and it was really there were moments we were like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And I think it's just that we were able to pick right back up. And I think that sometimes I wonder, like, which parts of my life are the important parts, and sometimes you don't know until long after. And I think it was nice that this showed me, anyways, that that was such a super important part of my life, for all the stupid shit that came along with it. That just told me that might have been the most important part of my life, were those years where I was doing that, just to be able to like pick it right back up. So like, I can't translate that into something that someone might walk away with. But like, I don't know, like, if you are, I would say, like, if you're still friends with the people that you were in a band with 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you can, like, why not do that?
Yeah.
Why not? Like, pick it back up and find the time. Obviously, we're all grown-ups here. It's not number one priority, but I don't know. Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for that. Like, maybe
That's a
maybe I'll email you a better answer.
I think the answer is already built in, because like that answer is, the ultimate importance of friendship and community, because this is something that meant the world to you 15 years ago, and you got to, like I said, put lightning back in the bottle.
And
Everyone's still willing, there's still love there, there's still vigor there, and you did it again, and there was no like the beat was still there. It's not like last record and this record there's such a departure sonically or anything. It just kind of makes sense together, and that's the great part. It makes sense with the rest of your catalog.
well, there's two things. The first is, it was nice that for the 8 days that we were in there with Jay, there was nothing else. I had told my clients I wasn't working.
Mhm.
I don't have children. My partner, she's super busy. I was fully in that room from the moment I woke up every morning, whether I went for a run or I got lazy. I was working on the words, then in the studio with Jay, then at night after everybody had gone to the bedrooms and everything, I'm sitting and I'm working. That's all there was for 8 days. And that again is like just I just felt incredibly lucky to just have that time. Like I can honestly say, like I put everything, we all did, all four of us, like we're fully present the entire time. The other thing about picking up where we left off, even though the last record came out like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
actually it might have been 10 years ago, there wasn't anyone. Of course, our musical tastes have evolved. There's no way that has to happen, but everybody was like, we're making a Pilot to Gunner record. Let's
Mhm.
not forget that. We're not, you know what I mean? There's not going to be some sea change in what we're offering, right?
Yeah.
So we all just agreed, like, we're making like short, punchy, to the point. That's what we're doing again, you know,
Yeah.
which was saved us a lot of time.
And yeah, you can't really lose with not a formula, but with a blueprint like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make concise, important, tough music.
Yeah.
There's no losing in that regard. So I guess at that rate, I will say this. This record has been a great surprise for me because I didn't think I was getting another Pilot to Gunner record. I really didn't. I didn't think that was going to be a thing again. I didn't think that in 2022 I would get to kind of like turn on. We don't turn on the radio anymore, and we barely put on a record anymore. But for me to hit play on a file and still get a taste of something that was really important to me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 some years ago, because I first heard you guys in the late 90s.
Did we ever play together?
Yeah, we played a fest or two.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, we did. We did. I figured you'd recognize me at some point. I had long hair back then. But um that I never thought that I would get to kind of re-experience that, and it's amazing and really important to me that I got to. So I thank you for that.
I wish I had just recorded the last like 2 minutes of this. No, the surprise that you're talking about is that's really meaningful, because I think that's, yeah, it has been a surprise for fucking sure.
It's really been a high point for me this summer. And it's been a great couple years for me with having a 3-year-old and in my late 40s, kind of hitting the familial reset button, as it were.
Yeah.
But this has been great, and I appreciate and applaud what you guys have done, and I hope you keep doing it. I really do hope you keep doing this, because you haven't done anything that sucked. As base as that sounds, there's nothing to bemoan in your back catalog.
We're
So
lucky.
you are lucky. So at that note, even though you haven't recorded the last couple minutes, it has been. So you'll get to hear it again.
No, this has been great, man. This has been really fun. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this, and I really have. To the point where I keep forgetting that it's an interview, and I keep wanting to turn the questions around to you.
You could. It's not an interview, it's a discussion. Listen, with this podcast, I don't do interviews, and I don't talk to bands or artists that I don't like. I'm not like a shill. I don't come in here and like I'm baiting you into a discussion that, like,
Yeah.
I fucking hated your band 25 years. It's not me. I
Right.
don't have that in me.
Finally.
I don't have the time for that, Scott. I
Well,
don't.
are you playing? Do you like pick up? Like, do you play music at all anymore? Like,
Yeah,
just
I'm still in a band. I'm still in a very rudimentary hardcore punk band called Heart Out. We named ourselves after a song by The Fall. It's our album's out there. It's not anything
I know what I'm doing tonight.
to write home about, but we're a hardcore band. That's it.
Awesome.
We just make like melodic hardcore music
All right. Well, I'm gonna find it.
by old fucks. And I'm the sort of kind of singer, and that's about all it is. But it's great, and
I'm
I
the
love
sort of
it.
kind of singer too. Look at
Yeah,
us.
yeah. But you actually play an instrument and have a voice. I'm just. I have an English degree. Fuck you.
Yeah.
But in truth, like I'm everything I've ever done. I just kind of I want it to be not ubiquitous per se, but true
Mhm.
to who I am and true to what the roots of my the oeuvre of what I've experienced since I was 8 years old when I saw the Clash in '83. 7 years old, 8 years old.
That's wild.
Yeah, well, I mean, my dad and my uncle were cool. I mean,
Yeah.
for as wild as my dad was, Vietnam vet, crazy drug-addled dude, he was a beautiful human. And you want to see the Who? Yeah, I want to see the Who. And he took me, and it just so happened at Shea Stadium the Clash was opening and blew the side of my
That,
head off. But
that's
then,
like one of the all-time shows.
yeah, I know, and
Wow.
it's a happenstance, really, because had my father not been in the compromised state of mind he was in when he took
Sure.
me, I wouldn't have ended up there. But goddamn, thanks, man. Like my dad passed. I love and miss him. He really set me on a path. And he was a jazz musician. Like my dad
Oh,
played with
okay.
Muddy Waters. My dad was he had balls.
Play
So he
with
put
Muddy
himself,
Waters, you probably had to have balls, right?
yeah, and he put himself out there. So he got these opportunities to play with Muddy Waters and people like that. And boy, he put me right in the thick of it. I
That's
mean,
amazing.
there are some low points too, where like he took me to see The Dead with Jerry Garcia, and I stood there and I was 7 and bored. This is the face I had.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
fuck
compared
this,
to the Clash and the Who.
fuck this music, Dad. But at least I knew who I was.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I think we all kind of do by that point. But I mean, what was it like for you? Like you're a kid, your formative music, like fuck punk or whatever. Just what was the formative? What was the definitive? Like
I mean, my first concert was John Denver,
that's awesome.
and I remember it clearly, and I loved it. That was like my parents had a lot of country records, and it was so great. I was
Oh,
up
of
way
course it
past
was.
my bedtime, and the guy, his voice and his playing, like the night flew by, I remember. And then I years later asked my parents how long that show was, and they were like, it was like there was an intermission. It was a long show, but in
Wow.
my memory, it flew by. So that that foundation was laid by my parents, and then it was kind of hanging out like skateboarding and BMX. The older kids would have the boombox. The boomboxes were theirs, so
Yeah.
it was punk rock, it was hardcore, and then there
Mhm.
was a radio station at the community college, with a show called Intestinal Infestation that came on in the morning before I went to school, and I'd pop in a blank tape and record as much
Yeah.
as I could,
Yep.
and I would then figure out what I liked, and then I would have to go ask the older kids or the older brothers of my friends who were cool, who is this? I think he's saying this, I think he's saying that. And so that was kind of it. There was also that like felt secret. I had to go like find it. It
Well,
wasn't at Record Town. It wasn't, you know what I
no,
mean?
the tape trading. Do you remember the tape trading?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was so steeped
absolutely.
in the tape trading, And the college radio, like we had something similar in the Scranton, Pennsylvania area called it was called the Wheat Fields. It was Scranton University, and I would pop the tape in, and I would barely get the signal sometimes. So sometimes it was really like coming through at a minimum.
Yeah.
But, we would get everything from, Suicidal Tendencies first record all the way to, you'd get some of the Germs, but you'd get some really, really like Poison Idea, the Meat
Nice.
Men, and the Meat Men were very dicey at that point, to the point where like
They were dicey.
they were very dicey. Tesco V was a dicey human being. I still love the music, but wow, what the fuck? And we would get that, and I didn't, believe it or not, I didn't stitch together that seeing the Clash and hearing this were of the same thing. To me, the Clash were the same as the Stones, were the same as T-Rex, which I had this youthful, I was enamored of Mark Bolan, as I'd said. To me, that was all the same. And then to hear Tesco V and to hear like Gigi Allen, I was like, oh, that's bullshit music, isn't it? That's terrible. It wasn't until I'd heard Husker Du and put Husker Du and the Descendants together with the Clash, together with the Germs, together with Joy Division, and it all kind of like made this psychic miasma of beatific jubilation, that I knew what punk really was.
Yeah.
And that was still young. I was still like 9 or 10 and 86 putting it together, you know. Um
You
and
know what?
I'd think that's the same. It would be like a similar thing for you with the tape trade and all of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, yeah, like kids bringing in their older brothers' records, like
Yeah.
Minor Threat, the Pistols, like all, the big ones. But there was another thing about making tapes. I was dubbing my parents' vinyl, Stones, the Beatles, onto cassettes, but the choruses weren't loud enough. So I was bumping the recording volume for the choruses for these Stones and Beatles songs. And then even when I would borrow my friend's older brother's Van Halen records, Panama specifically stands out.
Oh
I
yeah.
had to I had to bump the volume on this. So all my dubs were these artificially raised choruses. And then I realized that the punk rock bands I was listening to were already doing that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they were doing this thing that I had always missed in classic rock and stuff like that. That was another kind of moment for me. I was like, holy shit, like these guys are already doing it.
Yeah,
Like
the
I thought
terrorist
that was cool.
chant, the sing-alongs. There's that is very intrinsic to the punk and hardcore experience. Maybe more so hardcore, but still punk rock. I mean, the Sex Pistols were very in tune with the soccer hooligan terrorist chant of it all, as were
Yeah,
Cockspar, which they're an oi band, but to me that's more like that they have more in common with pop music.
sure.
Like when
I,
my wife and I got married, we walked into my wedding with "We're Coming Back" by Cockspar. There's just something like anthemic and very beautiful and uplifting about it all. I think more than counterculture, more than anything else, what made punk rock so attractive to all of us was the chorus, the uplift, the fist in the air, the two fingers, you know what I mean?
yeah,
We could call it politics, we could call it whatever. It really comes down to what it makes you feel, and what it makes you feel is uplifted.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't quite know what Jello Biafra was talking about, but
Yeah,
I knew I knew that it made me feel something,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Holiday in Cambodia where people dress in black. It's like, I think my dad was there in Vietnam, but it doesn't matter because it's fun as hell to listen to, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it sounds kind of like Dick Dale in a weird way.
Totally. Yeah, East
Yeah.
Bay Ray, absolutely.
Yeah, East Bay Ray was very much a surfabilly type. Like he just shredded. He was
Yeah,
beautiful. It's a shame that they hate each other so goddamn much.
It is a shame. Yeah.
But there's that uh, there's that part of not just punk rock, but of what people would consider alternative, that it takes itself less seriously, even though it's more serious. And I think that explains the late 80s, early 90s, as far as what happened with the Pixies, and then later on with your Nirvanas.
Mm-hmm.
It makes so much sense, because we were so done with people shaking their asses and trying to be T-Rex, who I loved, and the Sweet, who I loved, but they inspired a bunch of shit. It was time for Bob Dylan to have a 2/4 beat and a little bit of punch, and that's kind of what went down.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think I'll leave you here, because I've been dragging this out longer than I should.
This is a big Friday night for me.
This is my big Friday night too. I'm not going to lie to you. My son's finally asleep. I can have an adult conversation. It's a beautiful endeavor at this point.
Yeah.
But I've had a great time talking to you.
Same, man.
And yeah, your music has meant a lot to me, so I just wanted you to know that before I let you go.
Thanks, man. This has been fucking awesome.
Yeah, I agree. So when and if you do something again, another record, would you come back on here and slug it out with me once more?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Much appreciated, brother.
All right, man. All right, have a good rest of your night.
You as well.
All right, I'll see you.
Take care, bro.
Folks, that was the lovely and talented Scott Padden. As you've heard, Scott and I absolutely have what I explained in the beginning of this episode, a shorthand. And you heard it here. Scott will be back for another episode. Seeing as though this episode is something that I couldn't truly top, I will leave you with this. From 3:33 a.m. Studios, I've been Peter. He's been Scott. You've been beautiful. Take good care of each other, everyone. And have a great night. From the book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast.